It's the Mike Nowak Show with Peggy Malecki. Green, gardening, and environment radio, flavored with a dash of humor. Welcome to intelligent, irreverent talk about plants and the planet they grow on. Your questions, comments, and participation are always welcome on Facebook and Instagram at The Mike Nowak Show and at Mike Now on Twitter.
Good planets are hard to find. Temperate zones and tropic climes. And true currents and thriving seas. Wind blowing through breathing trees. Strong ozone and safe sunshine. Well, good planets are hard to find. Good planets are in demand.
Brought to you by Bartlett Tree Experts. Every tree needs a champion. Go to bartlett.com.
Jet streams, perfect air.
And here they are, Peggy Malecki and Mike Nowak.
Well, good planets are in demand. Right.
I see, according to my screen, that you actually got on Restream this morning.
No.
Then who said good morning, everyone? The Mike Nowak
I'm
Show.
on Facebook. I'm on Facebook.
Oh, that's where you did it. You did it on Facebook. Okay. There we go.
I did it on Facebook.
And Becky's having issues on Restream this morning, so bear with us. I'll try to comment as things come in. Skeet's already with us.
On Facebook. I just can't comment on YouTube.
On YouTube, but we'll do what we can. Hey, everybody. It's the holiday. It's the holiday season. Not that holiday season. No, this is the summer holiday season. Which means we're going to be talking about all the explosion. Boom, boom. Wait. The explosion of farmers markets starting this weekend and next weekend. And our buddy Bob Benenson from Local Food Forum is going to be with us to bring us up to speed. In fact, I need to check. Did he send that he was going to send me some photos? He was out. Yeah. Okay. He's got batches of photos here that I'm going to have to load in.
Batches and batches of photos.
Uh-huh.
Oh, and yes, because it is Memorial Day weekend.
Yeah.
Are you wearing white shoes today?
Am I wearing what? White.
You can now wear your white shoes.
Like I have white shoes anymore.
I don't think anybody follows that.
No, no.
Maybe like my grandma.
It's that's old school. That's really old school. My grandma. Yeah.
You can wear the white gloves, the white shoes, and the hat after.
Yeah. And then what about the white belt as well? That was the when I was in college, that was known as the full Cleveland for some reason. I have no idea why. But the white shoes, white belt.
Full Monty.
Yeah, I don't know. But that's what that was. So anyway, Bob will be here with us at 10 o'clock to talk about markets and what's going on in the food world, because there's a lot going on. Of course, as we get into summer, everybody's growing stuff. We've been harvesting. We've been making our own salads from our backyard for weeks now, with spinach and bok choy and some baby chard and some other stuff. The kale is rocking. I'm going to be able to make my world famous kale and quinoa dish from the kale we have there very soon. As soon as we have enough.
You won't have the tomatoes yet, but
yeah. Mr. Brown tells us that Evanston and Wilmette have had their farmers market up for a month now. Well, so has Green City Market's been up for a month as well.
April, yeah.
Since April, right? They started to get 2 months. They've been up 2 months. And the in my backyard, Logan Square has been up for a month, and I haven't been there yet. This is like I get done with this show and I collapse in a heap, and I'm like, oh, do I really have to go out to a farmer's market? No, I don't want to. I might do it today, though. I'm thinking today. Of course, the day I choose, it's going to be jam-packed because it's the holiday weekend. So Any, yeah. So anyway, folks, we'll be talking that. But before we get to that, it's Monarch season as well. The Monarchs are up here. In fact, they're in Wisconsin. They're in Michigan. They're all over the place. Although have you seen one, Peggy?
No.
Neither have I.
No.
I have not seen a Monarch.
I haven't seen any butterflies. I've seen a lot of dragonflies. But
I
no.
saw a couple of butterflies really early on, ridiculously early, like a couple of months ago in my backyard. And they were just, cabbage butterfly. And it was probably one of those weird warm days. And the guy looked around and went, "Oh, I'm really early. I shouldn't be here." But no, I haven't seen any Monarchs, but I'm hoping very soon. And we're going to have Dolly Foster with us on the program today. She's a horticulturist, an expert on this. She's getting her degree, her master's, after these many years, as she has told us. And so she's going to...
been on the show since, I think, 2019.
The last time she was with us, and I checked it out, was when we were at the Chicago Flower and Garden Show. It was the last time that we were at the Chicago Flower and Garden Show in 2019. Yeah.
And then back in the studio, I found some really fun photos of us with Dolly when she brought her butterflies into the studio.
Oh, that's right. I had forgotten that. I'd forgotten all about that. Yeah, she did. That was ultra cool. And as a matter of fact, let's just bring her in right now. Dolly. Yeah, come on in. Come on down, Dolly. How you doing this morning?
Good morning. I'm great. How are you guys?
All right. I had forgotten about you bringing in the butterflies. You kind of went nuts that day.
Yeah, it was a strange sequence of events. I was heading to my father's 75th birthday party later in that day, but I was not going home. So I had to bring the butterflies to you because I couldn't go home and get the butterflies to go to New Lenox for my dad's birthday party.
And were you bringing them for us or for your dad?
It was for both, but
Okay.
when I got to the birthday party, we released them with all the little kids that were there, and a lot of the adults that were there had a lot of fun releasing them. So.
And because that's what you do, one of the things you do is you do raise some monarchs each season, and we'll talk about that. In fact, let's talk about that right now. We'll just start with that. I should mention though that Dolly, as I mentioned, is a horticulturist. You used to be the horticulturist for the Oak Lawn Park District, and now you've decided let's go to school. Which I managed to dodge my whole adult life, and good for me. But no, you want to be there. And why are you going back to school?
I'm going to finish my degree, my master's degree that I started a long, long time ago, and hopefully move on to bigger and better things. And my degree is going to be in crop science, which doesn't seem like it would have very many uses up here, but maybe urban agriculture is something I might like to get into. So we'll just have to see where the road takes me.
Yeah, well, you were talking about that with me the other day when we were doing a test of the system here, and you said you've already learned some eye-opening things about and how it relates to monarch butterflies as well, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
All right, give us a for instance. Come on, just give us a for instance.
Oh man, way to put me on the spot, dude.
I put everybody on the spot. That's my job.
That's what he does. That's his MO.
That's my MO, man.
Right? God, I can't even think of anything.
Well, all right. What we were talking about, I think one of the things we were talking about the other day was the loss of habitat for monarchs. And
yes, we were talking about crop row sizes.
Right.
And back in the 70s and the 80s, the crop row sizes were significantly wider. And I remember when I was a little girl, driving on vacations and things like that, and being able to look down the corn rows and seeing through the corn rows milkweed growing in the corn. And that existed until about 1996 and 97 when Roundup Ready corn was released. And also the corn rows
they Yeah, they started planting them closer together, or what happened?
Yeah, that was the other thing, that with corn and soybeans and other crops, they're starting to make the corn rows significantly more narrow, which is a challenge because they actually have to build new equipment in order to do it. And that the reason for that is to shade the soil more, because the more shade you give the soil, the more canopy you create over the soil, the less weeds you'll have.
Okay.
So they can use less weed killers, basically, less weed herbicides.
That's the theory always. It's always about how do we use less herbicide. But unfortunately, in some ways, that hasn't come to pass. That, because
No.
we're finding.
But like I said the other day, farmers are out there trying to be efficient and save money. They don't want to use herbicides unless they have to, and they are not going to overuse herbicides.
Well, it costs them money, if they overuse them, right? But the problem is we still don't have. It's one thing I mentioned to you the other day, and I've said on the show before. Back in the day, you saw a field of corn or soybeans, and what would pop up in between the rows were milkweeds. All right. Now you won't see milkweed because they're killed off by the Roundup. All you see are the Roundup ready crops, the volunteers from the previous year. So you'll see corn pop up in the middle of a soybean field instead of milkweed. It would be much better for our pollinators if the milkweed popped up. But that has been the effect, one of the effects. And this is one of the problems. We're talking today about monarch butterflies, and they're in trouble. And if you look at the headlines, and I wrote about this on my blog today, you can go to MikeNowak.net. And if you look at the reports that are just coming out, and one of the things that's weird this year is the reports just came out. Usually, you mentioned this to me the other day, Dolly. Usually we get them
last week.
Yeah, we get them in February generally. This year,
The overwintering reports.
Yeah, the overwintering reports, we're just receiving them now, and that's weird because the butterflies are already here up in the upper Midwest and into Canada, I would imagine. Any idea why that happened, Dolly?
I haven't heard anything, but I can only imagine that COVID is part of it. And some of the just local problems that they're having down in Michoacan are probably a part of it too. The researchers have to actually get on the ground, and they need to hike around the mountains, and they need to scope out where the edges of the monarch colonies are. They can do it by plane, but they also have to do it on the ground. And I had heard a snippet a couple of years ago that they might start using drones, which would be awesome because it would be more accurate because they can get closer to the trees with the drones.
Well, I've seen drone video that has already been shot you've probably seen that as well. And the drones go in amongst the monarchs, and it's breathtaking. It's absolutely breathtaking.
You'd be generally surprised at how much noise the butterflies actually make when they
really
start flapping their wings.
Well, no, they're screaming at the drones. Get out of here! We're trying to overwinter. We're trying to sleep here. Come on.
Well, that particular video, that drone was dressed up as a hummingbird. It was absolutely amazing. Amazing. It was a tiny little drone, and the butterflies didn't even know it was there. So that was a very cool video.
Micro drone.
This is what we're talking about right now. This is the total area occupied by monarch colonies at overwintering sites in Mexico since 1996 or so, 95, I guess. I'm looking, 96. And the trend is not good.
No.
And what scientists and other researchers have come, they've set a benchmark for this, which is that first line you see up from the bottom. So it's about 6 hectares. All right. They say that 6 hectares of monarch occupation over the winter is probably the baseline for continued resilience as a species. And we've only been there once in the last 15 years, basically, maybe a little bit more than that, since 20. Yeah. And this year, the headlines you're seeing in the various publications are, "Ooh, monarch population up 35%." Well, yeah, compared to last year, in 2020, it was 2.10 hectares, or that's 5.19 acres. A year later, it went up to 2.84. It went from 2.10 to 2.84, which is from 5.19 acres to 7.01 acres. All right. Technically that's 35%, but look at this, look at the graph. That tells you the story that if you did an average of that, just like when you do graphs about climate change and the increase in temperature, there are variations up and down, but in general, the trend is up for the warming on the Earth. The trend for monarchs is down.
Yeah.
And we had a real big scare back in. I'm trying to see what year that was.
2013 and 2014.
2014, yeah.
Yeah.
So
yeah, and this is the eastern monarch population too, correct? Not the whole population.
Yes.
Right. Yeah, this is the eastern monarch population. The ones that migrate 2,000 miles each year and go from as far north as Nova Scotia to the forests of Mexico, the Oyamel forests, or is it Oyamel, however you pronounce it. And I'm kind of surprised. Well, actually, I'm not, because the groups who are promoting this probably want to do glass half full. They want to say, "Hey, it went up 35%." But I look at that graph and I think, folks, this is still not good. And part of it, there are a number of things that are causing this, and you know about this, Dolly. It's milkweed depletion, which we just talked about, is one of the things, and that has to do with Roundup and how we farm now.
Yeah.
Illegal logging. You were talking to me about that the other day. You said that there's still issues there. What is it you've learned about that?
Well, there's locals that are desperate for money, obviously to feed their families. The families are relatively poor rural families, and they will go up on the mountain and they will do some logging, and they will be able to make pretty much all the money that they need for several months or a year by logging a few of the large trees. And these are old growth trees. They're not quite as big as old growth sequoias that we see in California, but these are old trees. They're very, very large. And the other problem is that the Mexican cartels are starting to take over some of the avocado farms that are in Michoacan. So Michoacan has plenty of moisture. It's not desert. It's temperate forest. The Oyamel forest, where on the mountain where the monarchs are, that I've gone to, is beautiful. It's moist. There's fog. It's cool. It's shady. It's really, really beautiful. And it's good for avocado production. And so the individuals that are logging is a problem. The cartels taking over some of the avocado farms is a problem. But then also starting new avocado farms is starting. When we were driving around the area that week that we were there, you saw lots and lots of small greenhouses, hoop houses, gardening, like nursery production with shade cloth over it, and it was all avocado trees. So that's a problem, because then they divert water away from the natural areas on the mountain, and they divert the water from the mountain streams into their avocado farms. So that's denying the Oyamel forests the water they need.
So you're telling me avocados like it moist and misty? Is that the idea?
Yeah. They can't tolerate cold, but they are a temperate climate plant, which means they like they go through. I don't think they lose their leaves in the winter because they all were.
You don't know my
Definitely
avocado
not there,
plant here.
Um,
Well, that's because we're not in a temperate climate.
Well, actually, now
Right.
yeah, I'm going to go off script here because you brought this up. Do you know anything about growing avocados in our?
Absolutely not.
Oh, well, okay. Because I've talked to people. We've had people on the show who said a guy from California, and he goes, "Oh my, you should see my avocados." Well, you live in California, all right.
Right.
Yeah.
I've got
Yours
one.
doesn't come inside for 7 months of the year.
I have one here that it's 7 feet tall now, and I bring it in every winter. I put it out. I'm about to put it outside for the summer. It loves it outside. It sends out all these fresh shoots and
Oh
leaves,
yeah.
and but it's never bloomed. I don't even know.
No, because it doesn't have a long enough period.
I
Of,
know,
light outside,
and I bring
and
it
it
in.
doesn't. We don't have the pollinators here that it needs.
Yeah.
So I
Oh, that's a
guarantee
really
you
good
that,
point.
even if it
Yeah.
did bloom, there's a lot of very species specific pollinators for tropical type plants. So
Well, duh. Well, I'll just import the tropical pollinators here. What could possibly go wrong? So every year, about this time of year, it's in the living room. I give it as much sun as I can over the winter, and the leaves turn brown over the winter. A bunch of them drop off, and then I put it outside, and it goes nuts again. And
You should have it under your happy leaf all winter.
I could do that, but I'm too busy putting my veggies under my I need another happy leaf and just put it there, and then I'd have to find out how I'd have to string it up and blah blah blah. So my friend Diane, our friend Diane writes, I had a 3-foot avocado that I put outside, and the squirrels ate all the leaves and killed it. So, are you sure it was squirrels? I don't know, because I put mine out and they don't bother it.
If I put mine out, I'd probably have the squirrels or the chipmunks just do what they did in the past: dig it up, eat the avocado pit, and move on.
I mean, that's it. They're after the. Well, I'm past that. See, I
had ones that were pretty big. I put them outside a couple years ago and dug them right up and went to the avocado pit.
that's crazy.
But we digress because we're
Yes.
talking about monarch butterflies here, and the issues that I mentioned: milkweed depletion, illegal logging, climate crisis is another one. Guess what that's caused by, folks? Oh, it's us. Oh, yeah, I hadn't mentioned that. It's human beings causing all these problems. Yep, it's you can just point the finger right at us, because every problem that the Monarch has to do with human beings. And we're not going to solve the climate crisis, certainly not quickly, and that will be our undoing. We could solve illegal logging quicker if we could find a way to make people less poor and less desperate. We could solve the milkweed depletion. In fact, we are trying to solve that, because there are a lot of groups in the United States. There are partnerships, state and local, who are attempting to plant milkweed. And of course, people like you, Dolly, who encourage people to plant milkweed in their backyards.
Yep. Yeah, it's one of my favorite plants in my garden. I have, I don't know, several species, probably about 5, 6. And I started out butterfly gardening a long time ago, and I didn't know anything about milkweed back then. And I was a failed milkweed gardener for a few years, because I had all these species in my garden that were on the lists in the garden books, but they were all not species that were native. And one of the first milkweeds that I encountered was Asclepias tuberosa, which is the orange milkweed, the butterfly weed. And that's a really common plant in almost every garden center in the Midwest. And it was kind of my introduction to native plants. And I've loved it ever since. It's been a challenge to grow in my clay soil, but I have found certain places where I can grow it. But yeah, it can be a challenge if you have wet soil over the winter, which who doesn't here in the Midwest? We all do. But there's certain little, spots that you can amend, and everybody's soil's slightly different in their gardens in different places. So you can find a spot for it. But that was really my introduction to native plants. And when I started seeing caterpillars on that, and then I expanded and found swamp milkweed, and I found gardeners who could help me learn about it. And I joined Wild Ones, which is an incredible organization. And there are local chapters all over. Here in Indiana, where I live, we have had the only Indiana chapter up here in Hammond at Gibson Woods for many, many years. But now there's a chapter down near Indianapolis, and many chapters in Illinois. And it's a native plant society. And they concentrate on teaching people about how to landscape with natives to increase the population of not only monarch butterflies, but also all pollinators that are native. And they are really good at education, very good at education. And so I learned a lot from there, and just kind of went from there and just kept exploring different kinds of native plants and expanded native plants in my garden. And I continue to do so. And I love growing them. So,
well, I love the idea of milkweeds as the gateway plant to growing natives.
Yeah.
And
you know what? And it's a little addicting. The first time you see a caterpillar on a milkweed, oh my God, it just blows your mind. It just blows your mind, because we're so not used to seeing very many insects in our gardens anymore.
Yeah.
I think we've all gotten complacent to that. And we need to see the
yeah, I would put it another way. We've become numb to that because, all of us, the three of us, are of a certain age. When we grew up, when we were kids and playing in the dirt, insects were everywhere. And it's not the same. It's not, and that's anecdotal.
The windshield effect, as it were.
The windshield effect. And some people think the windshield effect is not, well, it's not scientific. And I get that, but there have been studies that show that our insect population is declining throughout the planet. And there's so much anecdotal evidence of that in some respect you always need the science. You always want the numbers. But when everybody notices it, even people who are not interested in science, then something's going on. You have to tell me something's going on. A couple of things. You mentioned butterfly milkweed before we get to the break here. You mentioned butterfly milkweed. I've never had any success growing it. And I don't even have that much clay. But what I do have a problem with is sun. And so I'm going to make you, later in the show today, talk to us about plants that do well in shade, but are still going to attract pollinators.
I have a whole list for you.
You do? Wow. Okay, great.
And my butterfly weed success finally.
Really? So you got it.
It took me several years too.
It took a while, and it's been coming back now. This is the third year. It's coming back like crazy right now.
That's good.
It found the right spot.
You must have, because you don't have any sun either, or very little.
East side.
East side. Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
You have to find the right spot.
Right. And I'll have to try that. And the other comment I was going to make is about caterpillars. I've had milkweed in my yard for a number of years, have yet to see a caterpillar. And I suspect that if they are here, they get picked off by
which is something whoever. I'd like to talk about after the break, because that's
it's possible. And it's not birds. I'll tell you that right now. It's not birds. We'll start there.
I got a lot of wasps, but I watched them pick them off.
Yeah, it's a lot of other things that eat them. It's not birds.
Because the birds learn early on that it's not. They don't taste so good. No, because they've got all those nasty chemicals that have to do with being able to eat milkweed, coursing through their veins. That is to say, if they have veins, and I have no idea. All right. It's the Mike Nowak Show with Peggy Malecki. We're talking to Dolly Foster today about and we got some pictures here. We got some videos that we're going to have to pop up for everybody. And there she goes. She's disappeared.
Sorry.
Oh, and now you're back. That's okay. We're going to have more on monarchs and milkweed. Please send us your comments and your questions, and we will be right back after this.
All right, so I wanted to talk about the Happy Leaf grow lights that we got from Happy Leaf LED. They're produced in the U.S. and they are constructed really well. They hit the red light range kind of spot on, and yeah, for the price, construction, and the results, they're worth every penny of it. Right now we're using them for producing some microgreens here in the off season, and as you can see, there's just a handful of lights that have a wide beam angle, and on the technical side, they just cover a lot of area with least amount of equipment necessary. For transplants, we do our tomatoes, peppers, cucumbers, and we get them off to a great start early in the season, and we just love the results.
From spring seed and soil treatments to summer foliar feeding to fall stubble digesters, Blazing Star provides microbial tools from tiny biologicals for natural and organic farmers. They have solutions for home gardeners too. And Blazing Star also offers agroecological education and consulting, especially for permaculture work in zones 4 and 5. Learn more about these great folks and great techniques at blazing-star.com.
I was pretty well considered an outlier in nuts. And today, the nursery with the kids and everybody involved is still considered groundbreaking in the sense that we do it just different. Over in the Possibility Place in 1978. By 1982, we were strictly into natives and have been ever since.
Possibility Place Nursery grows more trees, shrubs, and perennials than I can count. Several hundred species, from large shade trees to very small perennial plants.
There is a native plant for every place in your yard. From trees to shrubs to flowers and grasses. They flower just as pretty. They flower on time. They bring in butterflies. They make the yard more dynamic. And every time you do a planting is an opportunity to add a native or to integrate a native into your landscape and make it richer.
Wow, what a coincidence. Actually, not so much a coincidence. That's a great place to. I imagine that you've taken advantage of Possibility Place in the past, Dolly.
I have. They are just fantastic guys.
They really are.
Yeah.
And so
have a lot of their plants. There's a lot of their trees in Oak Lawn in the parks, actually.
Ah, all right. Good for you. Yeah, really. All right. Welcome back, folks, and we're talking monarchs. We're talking pollinators today for your backyard garden. I want to show this map. Dolly just sent this to me this morning. This is where the monarchs are right now. This is where they've been spotted in the Chicago area in the general.
Not along the lakefront, anywhere around the lake.
Yeah, isn't that strange? Yeah.
Maybe it's too cool. I don't know. But as Dolly pointed out to me also, look at all the sightings in the northwest suburbs of Chicago. And not so much in Michigan.
I'm going to read that. April 26th through May 23rd, it looks like. I'm trying to figure out
that was from today. So it's today's map. There have been a lot of sightings around the southwest suburbs and even caterpillar sightings. But I would love to see more gardeners reporting their findings to Journey North, because this data is very important to research.
Yeah. I don't know that everybody knows that they can do that either.
They might not, but anybody can do it. It started off as an organization that was catering to teachers and teachers who had butterfly gardens at their schools. But now it's sort of anybody who sees monarch caterpillars, You can report eggs, you can report butterflies, you can report your first sighting of milkweed when it comes up out of the ground. It's a really cool thing.
And doesn't Journey North also have orioles and robins and all sorts of other citizen science reports on it too?
Yeah, and blue whales too, which is a fun
yeah,
joke I
that's
like to say about, sighting blue whales in Lake Michigan. You can put those on there if you want. I don't think you're going to do it. You can go look, but I don't think you're going to find them. But yeah, they do reporting of about a dozen species.
Yeah.
You
talked about.
I was just going to mention there's a number of organizations, and I have a link to Journey North at my blog post, but there's also Monarch Joint Venture, there's Monarch Watch. If you go to World Wildlife Fund, WWF, there's the Save Our Monarchs Foundation, which is devoted to planting milkweed, like you are, Dolly. So go ahead, Peggy. And all those links, by the way, I've got them all linked at my blog post.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I was just going to make the observation of, I know a little further west, I've seen milkweed up maybe 2 feet. But if I look in my garden, if it's 6 inches tall at this point. So it's, even if there were monarchs, it's not like I have habitat for them yet. So that could be why we're not seeing it a lot.
They'll lay eggs on tiny milkweed, though. They will do it. They follow the milkweed emerging, coming up from Texas all the way up through Canada. So if they find it, they're going to lay eggs on it. They might not lay, very many eggs on a 6-inch tall milkweed, but common milkweed grows so rapidly that it could go from 6 inches to 18 inches in less than a week. So it can support a caterpillar, even if they're starting to chew on it when it's 6 inches tall.
Well, since you and I talked the other day, we did a little preview of the show, which we posted on YouTube. And even since then, I'm going out in my yard and looking at the milkweed coming up. And by the way, I have common milkweed. That's the only one I have in my yard at the, what's it, Syriaca, however you want to pronounce it.
So there's some interesting things about Syriaca. What some observers and researchers have found is that common milkweed that is growing on the edge of your garden, sort of in an open configuration where it's not crowded with a lot of stems of milkweed, where there's like one and then a few feet later there's another and a few feet later there's another. Those are the best chances for you to be able to observe eggs being laid and to find eggs and to observe caterpillars. And then so the milkweed that I have on the edge of my garden, which my lawn guys consistently try to weed whack out.
To mow. Oh my goodness. Yeah.
They're getting better. They're getting better. They can identify them. But those milkweed stems, those first milkweed stems that emerge are the largest. I have the biggest seed pods off of those that are the earliest to emerge. And then those are the ones that I find caterpillars and butterflies laying eggs. But I always have stems that come up in the middle of my garden, and those I never find eggs on. And it's just a really interesting thing that people started observing. So you don't want a milkweed patch in your garden that is 10 foot by 10 foot, and it is 100 stems of common milkweed. You want maybe 4 in that space, because they have to be able to fly around the whole plant and up and under all of those leaves. And if it's too crowded, they just won't do it.
Well, that makes me laugh, because as if you have any control over the Asclepias syriaca that grows in your yard, or the common milkweed. All right, let's get into that, because there are different kinds of milkweed that I was not aware of. You told me the other day there are clumpers and there are ramblers. Now, the common milkweed, Asclepias syriaca, is a rambler, and that's because it's sending rhizomes out all over your yard. And what I've found over the last few years, and it'll come up where it wants to come up. And in my case, if it's in a spot I don't want, I just cut it back, and sometimes I'll reach in and rip out part of the root, along that area. It's going to come back. 2 things, though. Let's talk about ramblers versus clumpers. But you also say that common milkweed has a lifespan, that at some point it'll give up the ghost.
So it'll take 4 years for common milkweed to mature. in order for it to have a full flower and to get to its full height, which is about, if it's in full sun, it's going to be 5 to 6 feet tall. So in my garden, it's usually about 5 foot tall. It's just, a little bit shorter than me. And then it is a rambler. A lot of people will call it invasive. That's incorrect. Invasive is a word that we, in the horticulture and the agriculture world, we reserve that for plants that are exotic. They are not from this continent, that are coming in, and they are invasive because they are spreading around. They are doing their thing, but they are pushing out our native species. And since Syriaca is a native species, we don't consider it doing that. What it is an aggressive spreader, but you can also think of it as a rambler. I think I like that word better because it doesn't spread consistently through the garden, but it will be in this place this year. Next year, it's going to come up way over here, and then the next year it's going to go down to another spot in the garden. So my theory, and this is not scientific at all, my theory is that it's probably a really nutrient hungry plant. And once it uses the nutrients in its space, it's going to move to a new space. So, but that's not scientific by any means. So don't take me for my word. Don't come at me. But Syriaca has some really great attributes, though. One of the best is that it's a great caterpillar plant. It's great for observing caterpillars and butterflies. There are a lot of different insects that use that plant as a home. So it's useful for that, for giving habitat for other species. Unfortunately, one of those is the oleander aphid, so we just kind of have to deal with those. But one of the best attributes of this plant is their fragrance of their flowers, which is so beautiful. It's like lilacs and gardenia mixed together. It's very powerful. It's very beautiful in the evening. The more milkweed you have, the more scent you have. I think it's even better than the Orion pet lilies, the big, fancy oriental lilies that are known for their fragrance. I think it's better than those.
Well, yeah, some of those lilies you have to be careful because they'll asphyxiate you. It's like trying to bring in
exactly,
like trying to bring in a hyacinth or one of those oriental lilies in your house. No, don't do that. That's you'll never breathe again. But let's talk. You talk about other critters. There are also milkweed beetles that will show up on milkweed, and bees love it as well, pollinators. So there's a lot of good reasons to have it. If you're concerned about it being crazy, well, maybe you want to get a clumper. What are the clumping milkweeds? So
one of my favorite clumping varieties that you can substitute common milkweed for is prairie milkweed, and that's Asclepias sullivantii. And Asclepias sullivantii, I think, is going to probably be one of those varieties that's going to start appearing in the commercial trade, where we have seen common before. And by commercial trade, I mean in the native plant world, because you are never probably going to find common milkweed in a regular garden center, like a regular conventional garden center. I wish we could, and maybe we will in the future. But anyway, prairie, I think, is going to be the one that's going to come in more, because prairie it spreads a little bit, but what it does is it makes a colony. It doesn't spread and ramble and go all over the garden like common milkweed. It will stay in a pretty big area and slowly spread. And then eventually the original plant is going to die. Now, common milkweed, I have found in observing my garden, common milkweed's lifespan is about 7 to 8 years. And then you will either see it completely disappear if you're consistently collecting all of the seeds, or if you let, every 5 years, if you let a seed pod go, you're going to see some new seedlings. So you're always going to have common milkweed. You don't ever want, with all these milkweeds, you don't ever want to have every single seed pod on the plant release its seeds, because then you might have a lot of seedlings all over your yard, and you might not want that. But prairie milkweed is known for receiving. Yeah.
I didn't catch that, Peggy.
Mike, what you call the milkweed bomb.
Oh, yeah, milkweed bombs, which I've been known to throw into my neighbors' yards. This is just, that's what you do. And by the way, I happened to find an image. This is what you were just talking about, the prairie milkweed. Now that looks a lot like common milkweed.
Yeah, it's very similar. The flower cluster is a lot more open, it's more stiff, whereas the common milkweed flower cluster is a lot more like a ball, and it's a little bit more floppy than the Sullivantii. And the Sullivantii is a little shorter. It has that really wide midrib. Sometimes the midrib up the middle of the leaf is red. They're very, very smooth leaves, and in the botany world, we call them glabrous because they're kind of bluish, greenish, but they're very smooth. They're not furry like the common milkweed seeds. And it's another one that's great for caterpillars. So you can feed this to your caterpillars or let the caterpillars live on your plant and just let them do their thing.
I was not familiar with...
I was going to say it is available by seed, but like you said, I haven't seen it at the nursery centers really.
No. And this is the second year that I'll be selling it at my house at my plant sale. And so I'll have plenty of it this year.
Oh, well, speaking of that, we might as well talk about this. This is you growing various kinds. This reminds me of Craig LaHoulier, our tomato guy, who's going to be, by the way, next week, the 5th of June, it's Tomato Mania 5.
5? Okay. Wow.
Yeah, it's Tomato Mania 5 with Craig LaHoulier and KC Tomato. Get your tomato questions because we're not only launching into farmers market season, we're not only launching into Monarch season, we're launching into tomato season. It's all at the same time. But tell us about your sale, Dolly.
Well, this is all the milkweed right now. This picture was taken about a week ago, and I've got a few allium there for sale too. But I have a lot of different native plants, about 30 different native plants that I'm selling this year. And I think I'm selling 7 varieties of milkweed. So swamp milkweed, pink and white, prairie milkweed, showy milkweed, common milkweed. I have a little bit of poke milkweed, a tiny bit of spider milkweed, very limited varieties on that. Butterfly weed, world milkweed. So I have all different kinds for different spaces. There is definitely, no matter what kind of garden you have, no matter what size your garden is, there is definitely a milkweed that will be appropriate for your yard to attract monarch butterflies.
You mentioned one that I was not familiar with, which is poke milkweed, and here's a photo of that.
Yeah, and this picture I got from the monarchbutterflygarden.net website, which is a really great resource for not only milkweed plants, for information about milkweeds. The person who runs this website is Tony Gomez. He's a really, really good guy, very generous with information, answers all your questions. And if you're interested in learning about lots of different milkweeds, his website is probably better than mine because this is what he does as his job full time. And so he was nice enough to let me borrow his pictures. So poke milkweed's a great milkweed that is full sun to part shade. It's 4 to 6 feet tall, just like the common milkweed. And caterpillars will appear on this plant. The eggs will be laid on this plant. And it's more of a small colonizer, so it doesn't ramble like common milkweed, but it will spread a little bit like prairie milkweed. But it's a good alternative if you have a shady yard, dappled sun, part shade, half day sun. So this could be a possibility for your yard, Mike.
That sounds like. Can you save one of those for me?
Of course I can.
Well, I want you to then. You save one of those. In fact, save a couple, especially if you said it'll spread, then it'll be great. Yeah, I'd love to have a couple of those.
Can you pick up one for me too, please?
Sure.
And here's another one. Which one is this? Yeah.
This one is spider milkweed, which is also called green antelope horn. So and all of the milkweeds that I'm talking about today, these are all native to Illinois. This one is probably more commonly seen in southern Illinois, where it's a little hotter, because this is also a really popular milkweed in Texas and Oklahoma, those kind of areas where it's a little bit more open, a little hotter during the summer. But green antelope horn in Texas, it's making seed pods like right now. It's really, really early because it comes up in February. But this is a full sun to part shade plant. It can tolerate our winters. It goes to zone 4, and we're zone 5. So zone 4 is colder. It's 2 to 3 feet tall, and it's a clumper. So it's really low growing. It's got this beautiful green flower. It's a little shorter. And it can take some part shade. So it needs some sun during the day, but it can take the part shade.
And that's the spider milkweed.
Spider milkweed, yeah.
All right, spider milkweed does whatever. Oh yeah, never mind. All right, you were mentioning some shade plants, and obviously you can attract butterflies and other pollinators with there's lots of sun plants. There's a tyranny of the sun plants, but for those of us who are in the suburbs and in the city, I mean, look, you can do this. That's easy, okay? You know, the liatris, that's great. You can do this. Look at all that sun. That's just great stuff. And
well, I mean, some of that is because the butterflies need the sun.
Well, true.
Yeah,
the insects need the sun for the warmth.
Yes, that is true. But there are some plants that you can plant and attract pollinators even in part shade areas. I wouldn't recommend full shade. So you told me you were going to have a list of that, Dolly.
Yes. So I found 20 plants that you can grow in part shade that will attract all different kinds of pollinators and butterflies. So it's spring things like wild columbine and golden ragwort, which is a really cool ground cover. White turtlehead is a cool plant. If you want to go with turtlehead, go with the white, which is the native, because that will attract the butterflies, and it produces seed. Pink one does not. Violets. If you have just wood violets in your neighborhood, get some into your garden, even in your lawn. I don't care if there's violets in my garden or my lawn, because they attract flies.
That's most of my front lawn.
Isn't that home for fritillaria?
I
violets?
Think so. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, there's the kitty.
Hello.
Okay.
Okay, hi Finn. Say hi, Finn.
All right, hold on.
Bye, Finn.
Bye, Finn.
Where's
Coming
Legato?
Oh, Legata's hiding. There's Finn. Oh, look at that.
There's Finn. It's Finn. He's one of my strays that I took home. Oh, hi. Oh. Giving me a kiss, huh?
You're being totally upstaged. All right.
All right, back to the plants. Black-eyed Susans can take a half-day sun. Giant hyssop, which is Agastache. Cardinal lobelia. Blue lobelia. Oh, God. He sees himself in the camera. Let's see. There are three different goldenrods that can take some shade. Wreath goldenrod, zigzag goldenrod, and showy goldenrod. And showy goldenrod I have in my garden. God, Cat, you never do this. The showy goldenrod I have in my garden, and I really love it. That was that photo that you showed of the large goldenrod with the butterfly on it. It's a clumper. It doesn't run through the garden. It's not obnoxious at all. I absolutely love it. The flowers are gorgeous. And the important thing about the goldenrod and New England aster are very important to monarch butterflies, because these are the two plants that they feed off of during the migration back to Mexico. So it's really important for you, if you're going to have a native plant garden that is going to be for monarchs and for butterflies in general. Jesus, Cat. Then you want to have New England aster, and you want to have some sort of goldenrod, but don't ever just pick goldenrod and plant it from the side of the road, because that's the kind that spreads very
well.
fast.
And that's the kind that showed up in my yard, yeah, and I've been dealing with that, but that's okay. You know, again, if your yard is small enough, you can really manage that. If you have a huge yard, that might be an issue. Yes, Peggy.
Yeah, I agree.
So I've got zigzag. It grows beyond part shade. In my yard, it even grows in full shade. And last year, it was still going early November. So it's one of the last
I don't
things
doubt it.
that's loaded with pollinators. And
Well,
it's very
Yeah,
low.
'cause
It's not a
the
tall
last
plant. It's a
thing
low
to
plant.
do, yeah. Yeah,
Okay,
it is. Yes.
I'll tell you two plants that will do well in part shade that you haven't mentioned. Coneflower is one, and Monarda. Monarda, no, Didyma is the one that I grow. I don't know how well Fistulosa will do in part shade, but but I do know that Monarda Didyma will do well in part shade.
Well, I
So
didn't want to put the most obvious ones on here.
okay. But
Let's
some
see.
people might not
Another one.
know that. Okay. Just saying.
Well, that's true. That's true. Another one that I have in my garden that I really love very much. A lot of people like creeping phlox.
Yeah.
You know, the garden centers have out these big pans full of creeping phlox every spring. But it takes a really long time for that to grow and spread, and it's not native. But Phlox diviritica, which is blue wood phlox, is a native. And it's a really beautiful, small blue. It's got light blue flowers, but it's really fragrant. It's really nice in the spring. It blooms right after the tulips. Geranium maculatum, which is a native geranium, actually both native geraniums, they attract bees. Amsonia can take shade, both species.
Oh, really? Okay. Because I was
Yeah.
looking at I saw some Amsonia growing the other day, and I thought, well, I can't grow that. I don't have enough sun. But if it'll take some
You can grow
shade, that's
those.
great. Okay.
You can probably grow the one that has the fat leaf, which I think that might be Montana. I'd have to look that up. And then heuchera. There are native heuchera species that are not only attractive to tiny little bees, but they can be attractive to hummingbirds. And then helenium, which is the dogtooth daisy or sneezeweed, that can take half day, and I have that in my garden. And it likes moisture, so if you have moist soil, woo, that guy is going to get big. But it's gorgeous at the end of the season. Absolutely beautiful.
All right. I want to show something that you sent me, and this is just pretty amazing. This is what happens if you're growing plants that monarchs and other pollinators like. Is this your side yard? What are we looking at, Dolly?
This is a butterfly garden that I planted at my old job.
Oh, okay.
That the building manager asked for. They asked for a butterfly garden. And this is Liatris ligulostylus. I'm pretty sure. Some of the species I have a hard time keeping track of. But I think this is ligulostylus, which is meadow blazing star. And this is a September blooming Liatris. The interesting thing about Liatris is there's more to life than just cobalt, which is a great one for the summer. It's speciosa. It is a nativar of our native species. But there's about 11 species that are native to our area that will grow. And if you grow a number of these different species of Liatris, you will have Liatris for about 9 weeks instead of just for 2. So there's that advantage of putting some natives in. And then the other advantage is that ligulostylus is like that, and Liatris scariosa, which is the northern blazing star. Those are both magnets for monarchs at the end of the season in September, right when the migration starts. So if you want to see monarchs, wild monarchs, coming through your yard, and those monarchs came to that garden, it was a crisp, 62-degree day. It was very, very sunny that day. The next day it was dark and cloudy, and those monarchs had moved on. They were gone. So they need places to come and respite and refuel during the migration back. And so these late season perennial natives are really important.
All right, here's one. This is in my backyard last September. Speaking of late season, and this is not a native, unfortunately. It's a heptacodium, but still, what you'll see. Well, the monarchs have found our heptacodium tree right here in the middle of Chicago, in Logan Square. The heptacodium is great because it blooms in the fall, and the birds, the bees and the bumblebees and the monarchs love it. And about half a dozen of the monarchs have found their way here, and they're stocking up for their ride and their migration south. And that plant...
That's really cool. That was a lot.
Yeah, it was. I mean, and you can't even imagine how many bees are on that plant. And it's one of the things I look forward to in the fall because it is a late bloomer. And one of the cool things about heptacodium, sometimes called Seven Suns tree, it has the white blooms and then they fade to pink. And I've seen big species or big examples of this tree where it just looks pink from a distance because that's what happens to the flowers when they finish. So, all right. What have we missed? I'm wondering if there's any of the photos. Oh, yes. Before we get going, we have to show this. All right. You and a few friends there. All right. This is because, and let's go very briefly about raising monarchs. You raise some. In the last few years, there have been warnings from organizations about raising monarchs, meaning that you shouldn't do it in great numbers. Because it probably does more harm than good. You can do a few, and certainly for educational purposes, and that's kind of what you do, isn't it, Dolly?
Yeah, that's kind of where I've gone to, is that I'm just raising monarchs for the special events that I'm going to, like Monarch Fest and things like that, and a few for family parties and things like that. But I'm not raising as many as I used to, and I fully believe every healthy butterfly is important and valuable, but you have to be careful. If you're raising monarchs and all of them are dying every time you try it, then it might be time to give it up or reduce the numbers that you are raising, and just raise 5 at a time, just 5. Because you're more likely to be able to keep everything clean and keep them alive if you raise them 5 at a time, all in separate containers. And do this a couple times during the summer so that you can see the monarch, the life cycle and the metamorphosis, so you can show it to your children, share it with your grandkids. My brother raises them with his grandkids and my sister-in-law, and they absolutely love doing this. And the girls love it too. And at one point I had like 4 people in my family doing this. They were having so much fun. My dad was doing it with his wife, and they were just really having a great time doing it. And the thing is, though, is that you want to make sure that they're going to be healthy when you go to release them. And there are some risk factors of doing it in the house. So don't collect every single egg. Don't feel compelled to collect every single egg. You don't have to. Collect just a few if you want to raise just a few. But leave most of them out for nature. Make sure that you have enough nectar plants out in the garden for the butterflies. Make sure you have enough common milkweed out there and other milkweeds out there to feed the caterpillars. Do your observations outside. You can be part of the Field Museum Monarch tracking and reporting group that is just starting their training. So you can look that up on the Field Museum website. Another resource that you can get some information.
For the Kellogg Action Center on the Field Museum site.
Yes. Yes. And then another organization I wanted to mention was the Illinois Monarch Project, which is an organization that I was part of when I was working. And that is an organization that is promoting and helping organizations and towns all over Illinois to get on board with growing milkweed. They're working with the tollway, the road authorities all over the state, and they are working on the Route 66 Flyway project. So things are happening in Illinois that are going in positive directions as far as milkweed is going. So I find that very hopeful. I do. And people are becoming a monarch gardener is becoming more important. And becoming a monarch garden is more important than just raising butterflies and caterpillars. It's so important to provide habitat. And you can provide habitat in your own yard. But once you start to get to know what you're doing and learn more about it, then start sharing it with people. Share it with your neighbors. Put a sign up in your garden that says that you're a Monarch way station. Join Wild Ones and share it with your church, and start a Monarch garden in your church, and start one at your local school, and start one at the local parks. Go to your park districts. Ask for butterfly gardening in your park districts. And you might be able to work with them very well and be a partner with them. If you're willing to help take care of the garden, the park districts might be willing to actually help install and pay for the plants. You just have to, make inquiries, see, you may have to get a grant or something, but get out there and share this, because I think that the idea that we're going to restore all of the milkweed in the farmland is not going to happen. However, if we think of the Midwest as a giant lake, and we think of all of the small monarch gardens and habitats that we are taking care of all over the Midwest as small ponds, lily pads on those ponds. That means that the monarch population can jump from garden to garden to habitat to habitat to habitat to habitat. It might not all be one big long string of habitat, but smaller habitat that is spread around in a pretty consistent way is going to help. So I just wanted to stress that.
Well, and I also want to ask you, if folks want to get in on your milkweed sale, how do they do that, given that you live in Indiana? How are you doing this?
Well, I live right on the border, so it's not hard to get to me. I'm not going to do any deliveries unless it's a really special case, but I am going to open my sale on June 11th and 12th at my house, and you can email me at plantsale@hortforyou.net, and you can get the plant list. I'll give it to you, and we can talk.
In fact, we have some Indiana viewers here, so that might be good. And of course, they can always go to hortforyou.net in general to see what you're up to. Dolly, thank you so much for being on the show. And yeah, folks, if you want the Monarchs to keep going, if you want that number to go up another 35%, which would be even better for next year, plant some milkweed.
Keep up the good work.
All right, Dolly, thanks. Have a great Sunday. We'll talk to you soon.
You too. Thanks for having me, guys.
Our pleasure.
Love being on.
All right.
Bye-bye.
We kept you late. We're running over. We need to get to Bob Benenson from Local Food Forum. All right, we will do that next. Please stick around.
Hey, good morning, Dr. Drew. How you doing today?
Good morning, Victor. I'm doing well, thanks.
Right here we have a canker on the stem of this chestnut oak, and it's kind of got this dark staining around it. I just want to ask you, when we encounter an oozing canker on the trunk of a tree, what should our first step be?
The first step's got to be to figure out what's causing it. It may be something relatively benign like a bacterial infection, or it could be something more serious like a Phytophthora disease. And you know Phytophthora can be bad because that word actually means plant destroyer in Greek.
Okay, so it sounds like we would love to rule that out. So how can you tell the difference?
Well, first try and find where that oozing's coming from. If it's coming from an obvious wound, a crack, a split, or a boring insect hole, then it's probably bacterial. You can also give it a bit of a sniff because the bacteria would actually be feeding and fermenting the sap in the tree. And so it's going to smell a little bit sour or alcoholic or fermented.
Interesting. So what if it smells normal and I can't find a wound or a hole?
At that point, it's more likely to be Phytophthora, but you're going to have to take a sample and submit it to a lab for testing because there's no way to 100% verify Phytophthora in the field.
Okay, so let's say that it's confirmed Phytophthora. What do we do now?
At that point, we want to combine some cultural treatments with some direct management options. There are stem and soil applied materials that we use to manage Phytophthora, and then also cultural things.
Cultural things such as what?
Well, Phytophthora thrives in saturated soil. So you want to look at irrigation, you want to look at improving drainage, adding organic matter, and mulching the surface.
So well-drained soil, organic matter like compost, and then maybe a mulch ring?
Sounds perfect.
But it all starts with a correct diagnosis, right?
Exactly.
All right, Dr. Drew, I want to thank you once again for your time. And as always, thanks for being a resource for our arborists here at Bartlett Tree Experts.
Thanks, Victor. It's a pleasure.
Welcome to the Mike Nowak Show with Peggy Malecki. Green, gardening, and environment radio with just a soupçon of humor. Or is that a dash? Brought to you by Bartlett Tree Experts. Every tree needs a champion. Go to bartlett.com. Here they are again, Peggy Malecki and Mike Nowak.
All I need is good food to eat and make me healthy, wealthy, wide awake. Lettuce, tomatoes, rooted bacon. What about those sweet potatoes? All I need is good food to eat. All I need is good food to eat. All I need is good tools to make me music, porches, lawn serene. Give me me all that I can.
And welcome back to the Mike Nowak Show with Peggy Malecki. There's our buddy Bob Benenson. And Bob, don't worry. We're going to give you your due here. We ran late on the... Oh, wait. And now I don't know why your mic... Yeah, let's get the mic on. Oh, gotta find it. Blah, blah, blah. No, it is on. You are on.
Are you muted?
Okay, no, I muted on my end, but I checked it early, and I wanted to make sure that my voice, my ghostly voice, didn't appear in your earlier segment. Although I know that.
And I was, I was thinking of the Bartlett spot there, and it gives a whole new meaning to the phrase "scratch and sniff." So, yeah.
In fact, I now know about 100% more about
cankers
than I ever knew before.
That's right. I've got to go out and look for cankers on my tree today. All right. Of course, there's a tree out in front that I would just like to. Yeah. Never mind. We won't go in that direction. Hey.
Why is Mike sniffing the trees?
That's right. Welcome, Bob Benenson from Local Food Forum. Boy, this is
really weird. There's like two of me.
Oh, I can. I guess I got to fix that. Okay, la di da.
We're doing CGI on the Mike Nowak Show with Peggy Malecki now.
Yeah. I guess. Let's see if we set that up.
I won't move. Let's not interrupt.
Yeah, you should. See, I can do that. There we go. So
more than one of me.
And Bob, this has got to be a great time of year for you.
It's a great time of year for me and everybody else who loves local food and loves nature and loves being in Chicago at a time when everything is coming back to life. It's just it's an amazing experience. It really is. A quick anecdote. I'm coming up in probably next week on the 40th anniversary of my first visit to Chicago. I grew up in New York. I lived in Washington, D.C. But I fell in love with this wonderful woman from Illinois, and we started visiting Chicago 40 years ago. And my mental image of Chicago was not spot on because, that was at the time that we were developing the Rust Belt in the Midwest. And I kind of thought that Chicago was going to be a funkier place than it turned out to be because nobody really talked outside of Chicago about the amazing natural environment in which the city is set. So Barb grew up on a farm south of Chicago. We came driving up and you hit Lakeshore Drive and you get past the museum campus. And all of a sudden the lake is opened up on the right. And on the left you had Buckingham Fountain and Grand Park and the skyline. And I was just smitten with this place almost immediately. Then I went to a game at Wrigley Field later that day and that kind of clinched it. So, that's kind of how I developed this interest in nature photography. And it's also why Chicago grew and grew and grew on me. So when my career in Washington, D.C. kind of was winding down, it was a very easy decision to make to move to Chicago.
Wow. And you went to see the Cubs when they actually had a Major League Baseball team. Now it's
sort of. This was 1982, so it's kind of.
Oh, okay. No, they were in the minor leagues then too, and they're back to the minor leagues now. Yeah.
In fact, they were playing the San Diego Padres, and the pitcher had the kind of interesting name of Juan Eichelberger, and he almost pitched a no-hitter against the Cubs. There was a dubious hometown official scorers ruling that called what should have been an error a hit. The Cubs did score a run on, without getting a hit, but and the Cubs lost 3-1. So I was already well on my way to becoming a diehard Cubs fan because I knew the drill.
Well, we can disabuse you of that.
From the jaws of victory, yes,
yeah,
special.
Yes, exactly.
So I was reading your newsletter the other day, and I cannot believe how many different farmers markets there are in our region, and most of them. Well, now they're all opening up. You mentioned a bunch that are opening this weekend. Today is the 29th, and a lot open for the Memorial Day weekend, but even more opening next week in the first week
during
of
the
June,
week.
during the week as well. Yeah.
Yeah, totally. And, Green City Market did something unprecedented this year and started their season in April. There are other handful of markets that start their seasons in April. And then in May, almost all I hate to use the term because it sounds like we're, separating into categories, but the bigger name ones, Logan Square and Wicker Park and Evanston, and some of the others, they open up in May. But for the most part, most of our markets don't open up until June. And obviously the reason for that is, the beginning of the growing season tends to shift a little bit year to year, depending on the weather, climate change, whatever's going on naturally. And this year we had a cool, rainy April, May. Some of the crops are coming in a little bit late. But for the most part, you're not going to get a real critical mass of locally grown, outdoor grown produce until June. So for the markets, especially, community markets, smaller city markets that, don't have the kind of huge population to support an early season market, it only made sense for them to, and continues to make sense for them to open in June. So this week we had 8 new openings. Next week, starting tomorrow, we have 27, and then it's going to be double digits every week through June until we get to, one of these days, I'm going to have to make a full accounting, but I think it's close to 100 farmers markets just within the Chicago metro area.
Yikes. So there's no reason, not to be able to get to a market. This is at Division Street. West Side B-Boys, we've had them on the show before.
Yeah, Thad's a good friend of mine from my family farm days. And the funny story there is that 8 years ago I went to a Cubs game and I got a bobblehead doll of Red Grange, the famous University of Illinois and Chicago Bears football player of a century ago.
Yep.
And I just didn't have an emotional attachment to it. In fact, I never took it out of the box. So we're doing a little cleaning here. And I just posted on Facebook, took a flyer, and I said, would anybody be interested in this bobblehead? And Thad has a collection of Chicago Bears memorabilia. So I brought him I introduced him to Red Grange yesterday, and he was kind enough in trade to give, and I didn't ask certainly, to give me 2 big jars of his amazing honey, goldenrod and orange blossom. And it's just incredible stuff that he produces in beehives that he maintains mostly on the south side of Chicago. So he's an awesome, cool dude.
Thad, yeah, I've had him on the show before.
Yeah.
And here's from Green City Market. So we're seeing honey, obviously. What are some of the vegetables? I'm seeing radishes there. What else am I looking at? Is that rhubarb?
That's rhubarb on the right. Yeah. Asparagus is always first. Now it's just ubiquitous at the markets. We're waiting and waiting and waiting, and now there's big piles of asparagus everywhere you look. Rhubarb is usually the crop that comes in next, and so that's an outdoor grown crop. The rest of the stuff you're seeing is, and this is a notable phenomenon, is that more and more farmers, Froman especially, has these huge hoop houses. And so they're growing basically undercover. So that early season, rain, cold, whatever it is, drenching storms, doesn't affect those crops. So that's why you're seeing, and this is my market haul from yesterday, you've got spinach from Nichols Farm and Market. You've got kale. One of these is from Nichols, and the other is from a farm in Michigan. His name is new, and its name is escaping me right now, which is embarrassing, but it will come to me. Asparagus from Mick Klug Farms. Mushrooms from River Valley Ranch. Mushrooms, of course, are something that grow all years because they're indoor grown. And then some pastries from Versailles Patisserie, and 2 packages of bratwurst and 1 of Italian sausage because we're having company for Memorial Day tomorrow. And just recently, I didn't think I could possibly need another piece of cast iron cookware until my wife stumbled upon a cast iron sausage pan. And this thing, absolutely amazing. It really is. Sausage, love sausages, love to cook them. You don't have a grill, so it's all stovetop. And the problem is that they tend to curl up. So when you're trying to cook that side that's curled, you have to like press them down.
Yeah, yeah.
So this thing, they stay straight. And
Ah.
they brown. So highly recommended for you sausage fans out there.
And more.
And this is Iron Creek Farm, also a Green City Market, a certified organic farm from LaPorte, Indiana. And right in the middle there, you're seeing another major phenomenon. And we've talked about this on the show before. But the quality of indoor grown heirloom tomatoes has just improved dramatically. The farmers must have developed technique or just the hoop house technology. But, until last year, really, these things have been around for a while, but until last year, I said, indoors, how good could they be? Because I'm sure like you, Mike, grew up in, mom brought home those little trays of rock hard indoor grown tomatoes.
Yeah.
And that were more suitable for batting practice than for eating. And so I just kind of wrote it off, and then I tried them, and they are just unbelievable how good they are.
They are good. The other thing my mom did was cook broccoli until it turned to mush, and I didn't even know that you could eat. I didn't even know you could eat raw broccoli until I was an adult, which is really sad. But
totally, and I don't remember. And my mom was a great cook, and I got my cooking Jones from her, but I don't remember her ever roasting vegetables. And I mean, that's just a staple for me. And I always say that roasted vegetables are the easiest, delicious things you can make. You just put them in a pan, slap some, oil or butter on them, season them to taste, stick them in the oven, and you got this great meal, in a half an hour to 45 minutes.
And we shouldn't forget that one of the great things about farmers markets is that it's an activity you can do outdoors. It's a festival. Really each week. And even now with some, COVID numbers going back up. So if you want to shop outdoors, this is the way to do it.
The festival vibe is, even if you're not an ingrained, local food, good food person yet, you will be if you go to the farmer's market. I've always said it was a gateway to becoming a good food movement activist because most of us, again, growing up, the food we ate came from thousands of miles away or hundreds of miles away. It sat in a warehouse.
No. My food came from
a can.
No, I was going to say it came from the freezer. That's where it came from.
Yeah, and it loses its vitality. It loses some of its nutrition load. And you get a carrot or a peach or asparagus or whatever it is that was picked yesterday. It hasn't even sat in a warehouse or in storage. You are eating food as our grandparents and our great-grandparents and older generations did because, before the industrialization and centralization of our food system, what we know as the conventional food system today, what did you call local food? You called it food. Most people grew up generations ago eating food that was produced locally. It was, the refrigerated shipment wasn't that common. You didn't have airplanes flying in fish from the coast. So you ate whatever your local farmers grew. And so we've kind of gone back to that for, not only for the issue of taste, which is fundamental. I mean, if it doesn't taste good, nobody's going to eat it. But, for environmental reasons, for economic reasons, reviving our rural communities, providing job opportunities, helping small businesses, because farmers are small businesses. They're entrepreneurs.
Mm-hmm.
Why would we not want to support them, to support our local economies? Everybody knows that dollars spent locally have a bigger impact than dollars spent and sent to, corporate headquarters hundreds of thousands of miles or overseas away. So You know, it's all good. But that festival vibe, you know, those people didn't look like they were shopping at Jewel. They looked like they had fun. They brought their dogs. They don't like you to bring your dogs into supermarkets. They're rolling around with their babies around in strollers. They got wagons and they're pulling their little pugs along in their wagons. So it's fun. It is fun. It's a break in your week that enables you to just go out there and enjoy.
So one of the things folks can do if they want to find out where the various farmers markets are, and it's interesting. I remember in years past you'd see the list of them in the Trib or the Sun Times, but now you can just go to localfoodforum.substack.com.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. I love the bell. I want to schedule every Monday, for the full week. It's going to get very, very long starting this week. So please have patience and keep scrolling. But also, because of capacity and space, I'm only able to do this for the Chicago region. And that's writ large. It's basically any county in Illinois that's in the Chicago metropolitan area, maybe stretched a little. But the Illinois Farmers Market Association, also known as ILFMA, has a interactive map where you can find farmers markets throughout the entire state of Illinois, and there are more than 300 of them. So if you're in Peoria, or if you're in Champaign, or if you're in Carbondale, and want to know where to shop locally, that's your resource there.
All right. Before we move on, there's some policy, and I know we can't get too deep into this, but you were writing just in the past couple of days about a couple of things. One of them is the World Business Chicago, the city's public-private economic development agency, and it held something called the Future of Food Summit. Were you able to attend that, or did you monitor that?
I was able to attend it. Wearing my other hat, I do contract work for Naturally Chicago, which is a nonprofit sort of trade association that works to connect entrepreneurs, investors, service providers, equity partners, mentors, to help create even more energy behind the fast-growing local good food and natural product sector. This is the CPG sector, meaning consumer packaged goods. So, on Local Food Forum, I'm mostly covering farmers and farmers markets and fresh local food. Naturally Chicago covers the other bases, which is the consumer packaged goods. And, we really have a thriving, growing community. It got rugged during COVID, but most of the companies that Naturally Chicago's worked with have survived, and they're growing. Again, talking about something that we've already talked about many times, but when the pandemic hit, the interest in good food, better for people, better for the planet food, really increased dramatically. Part of it was the fact that with the supply chain problems and the breakdowns that occurred early in the pandemic and now are repeating themselves, in this inflationary cycle that we're in now, local food provided food security. It was the first time in, most people's lifetimes in America that they faced a kind of challenge, finding food. You could just go to the supermarket in a lot of places 24/7 and get whatever you wanted, and that wasn't the case. But also the consumer concerns about food and wellness, food and health, food and sustainability, its impact on the environment, because people started reconsidering everything in the midst of this huge pandemic crisis. A lot of people's concerns which didn't come to the forefront about animal welfare. How are we treating our livestock, our animals? That became a big concern as well. So it's all feeding into this ecosystem that's supporting not only farmers and farmers markets, but also these innovative products. And that's basically what the Food Summit was about. It it was part of a series of events that World Business Chicago, and public-private agency that's run by the city of Chicago, has put on for years. And then, of course, they had the 2-year hiatus during COVID. But, it just occurred to everybody all at once, it seems, because they discussed the process. Mayor Lori Lightfoot was one of the speakers of how this summit came to be. And it was, they said, food is just fundamental. Over and over again, speakers refer to it, and a phrase that we've used at Naturally Chicago and I use for Local Food Forum, as Chicago is an epicenter of innovation and growth in the food industry. We have, on the big food side, we have some of the biggest Fortune 500 food companies in the United States. On the smaller side, you have this huge advancing movement towards better products and better food. So this is stimulating a lot of investment interest, and that's basically what the Food Summit was meant to promote, was greater investment in this sector.
When it comes to environmental matters and food, local food is certainly an environmental matter. Usually the Midwest is the slowest. We're the last people to get on board. The East and the West Coasts are involved, but it sounds like we're at the forefront of this, that, as you mentioned, we're a hub for this kind of innovation.
Yeah, and you're hearing more and more people talk about regenerative agriculture. And I happen to be on the leadership council of an organization called Regenerate Illinois. So we got this going on increasingly. Basically, the real foundation of regenerative agriculture, which is an extension of on organic growing, is soil health, protecting our soils from erosion, and protecting the ecosystem that's underground, those fungi and those microbes that enable us to develop healthier, more nutritious food. And also, there are a lot of people who think that regenerative agriculture practices can sequester carbon in the soil and reduce the risk of global climate change. But, when you say that the Midwest has been slow, is because the Midwest went all in after World War II on the conventional agricultural system.
Yeah.
And the USDA, our government, our farm agencies all promoted that. It was better living through chemistry philosophy.
And then in the 80s, it was get big or get out. And that was so harmful to farmers. And you saw what happened at the end of the 80s. Farmers went belly up, and it was a crisis in our country because of those policies that were enacted in the early 80s.
Yeah, absolutely. It did enormous damage to our rural economies. It reduced the number of small land holdings of people producing, and it persuaded a lot of farmers to do nothing but produce field corn and soybeans that go into two things. They don't go into people, except indirectly. They go into cows and they go into cars. Illinois is a farm state. We have some of the richest soil in the world. The statistic is, that's repeated over and over again, is that 95% of our food is imported from other states and other countries.
We've been saying that for a decade on this show, and that needs to change. All right, before we two more things. One is that the Secretary of Agriculture, Tom Vilsack, is going to be doing an event on Wednesday involving greater support for small farms and local producers. I don't know if you have, information ahead of time, or are you just standing by to see what happens?
No, I'm not in that loop. But
come on,
that inside track.
The USDA tends to keep things pretty close to the vest anyway. They want to control their own messaging. But the important thing here, and this has been kind of quiet in the background, because let's face it, we've had a tumultuous year and almost a half since President Biden took office, with the ongoing pandemic and with inflation, in which other economic concerns, and then the war in Ukraine, and all this horrible gun violence that's going on in our country. So issues that aren't usually in the headlines don't get a lot of attention, but very quietly, the USDA in the Biden administration has been promulgating policies and increasing funding that support local food systems, that provide more support for traditionally underrepresented groups, meaning women, people of color, people of different sexual orientations, and also to address some ongoing problems that are bottlenecks in our local food system, particularly the lack of local processing facilities for small and medium-sized livestock producers. They're experts at growing livestock, but if they have to drive them hundreds of miles to get them processed into meat, then it's going to be very hard and very expensive for them. So the administration has taken some initiatives to address that. What we're going to see Wednesday is how dramatically the administration plans to advance this goal of food systems transformation. And they've been talking about this from the get-go. I mean, even before the president took office, they were starting to put out white papers about this. And the pretext was that the pandemic had exposed fragility in our industrialized conventional food system that were never apparent before. Oh, it was efficient. It worked spectacularly. Anytime you needed food and you had the money, you could get it. And then all of a sudden you couldn't. And the supply chains were either broken down or they were clogged. Stores had empty shelves for the first time ever. There were those horrible scenes early in the pandemic where farmers had to bury edible food in a country where there's hungry people, or slaughter animals because they couldn't get them to market. And so that was a pretext for the administration to start talking about food systems transformation. So we're going to see what the end result of a months-long process of public comment and working with experts, how far they're willing to go in pushing for this kind of change. And also the important subtext of this is that next year Congress is going to be working on and presumably passing a new 5-year farm bill. And the farm bill, federal farm bill, covers all farm food and food assistance programs.
Yeah.
And we're going to see, what this will be a marker, I think.
Yeah, everything's a marker nowadays, and the part of the problem is that we every time, there have been incremental changes in the farm bill, but generally it's usually a disappointment to small farmers and to environmentalists. Okay, it'll be interesting to see if that changes to any great extent next year. I have to admit, I'm one of those people. When I saw that Tom Vilsack was being appointed Secretary of Agriculture, I was disappointed. I said, "Oh, same old, same old." Okay, we're moving on. We're not moving anywhere here. I'm hoping that has changed a little bit.
Yeah, it really certainly has. I mean, he's been pushing for all these, and I have no insight as to whether, he.
Oh, come on! They call you every day asking for your opinion on stuff. I know that. Okay. Before we go, you took some photos that are really cool. This is, I believe, in Lincoln Park. What'd you get here?
That is a heron, and I have to admit, and if any of your callers wants to pop something into the chat or something, I take a lot of pictures of birds. I'm not necessarily able to identify it, but it is a heron. And these trees just inside the front entrance of Lincoln Park Zoo off Stockton Drive have nests and nests and nests of these different kinds of herons. And you hear them flying and you hear them squawking and screaming. They are noisy birds. and it's just a spectacular spring thing that you have to know is going on.
I think if I'm not mistaken, these are black-crowned night herons. Peggy, do you have?
That sounds correct to me, but I never like to say anything because like, oh my God, this guy's an idiot.
There's been there's been a controversy, and I don't know what happened this year because
that's what they're looking like, black crown right here.
Yeah, and one of the things that happened is that there was an area, there was a walkway put in Lincoln Park area where there were some black-crowned night herons nesting, and some people were afraid that they were being chased out of their area. It looks like, well, and I know there were some at the lagoon as well, outside of the zoo and the farm there, but they were concerned about the ones behind the historical museum. And I don't know if they've come back. I'd be interested if anybody knows about that, whether they have returned to their nesting area there after being disturbed during construction last year. There were people who were terribly concerned about it. And we'll see. I mean, I haven't heard anything about it yet.
I'll have to investigate.
If you could. All right. So the other thing that this is out of your realm generally, and that is this guy.
That guy. Is that the cutest thing? It would kill you in a couple of years, but it's just like you just want to hug it, which would be inadvisable because his parents are watching over him very closely. This is Peely Peely.
Oh, you mean these people are watching over? Yeah, okay.
I love that photograph. I love that photograph. I was so lucky.
Yeah.
It's named for it's the Swahili word for pepper, and I think there was some kind of contest to name him. He was born on March 15th. Lion births in captivity are very rare, and they are, of course, a threatened species. And it was yesterday and Friday, Lincoln Park Zoo had a preview for members. But now, anytime you go out to the zoo, and they've redone the lion enclosure pretty brilliantly. It's amazing natural environment now. But you can view them from outside and also from inside. There are glass windows that you can look at them. Is that the cutest thing?
Yeah, like you said, it
looks like a toy.
It would eat you in a heartbeat if it could.
Oh, no question. The crowds were huge. This was funny because this is Mom trying to pick up the cub, and the cub apparently has gotten a little bit too big to be carried around by its neck, and it just slipped from her grasp, and he dashed off. And
there's that. These are amazing photos.
Thank you.
And you can see, it looks like they gave you a special spot, but if you look here, this one, you can see the crowds in the background.
Yeah, that's it. No, I was just one of the crowd. And the thing is that because they move around a lot, you have to be very mobile. So I was scooting from one vantage point to another to try and get their attention. One funny thing, the picture I took wasn't that perfect, so I didn't include it. But the lions were up on a tall rock. Mom jumped down. Dad's up at the top. Actually, at one point, he looked like he was trying to push the cub off, just to train him to, learn how to fall. But the cub was having fun with it. So they built a ramp. It's basically a wooden ramp, and it took a while for the lion cub to figure out what that was. But then he comes trotting down the ramp, and everybody's cheering. It was very sweet. But that's an amazing thing about Chicago is that I live in Lakeview. I live not far from North Pond and from Lincoln Park Zoo or Green City Market, and there is to have this much contact with nature so close to where I was basically halfway between densely populated Lakeview and the downtown of this enormous city with all the skyscrapers.
Yeah.
And yet we have access to it, plus the open lakefront, 24 miles of publicly accessible
and
waterfront.
we need 4 more added to that. Friends
They're
of
working on it.
Yeah, I know. We just got a notice from about that this week. And I will say, I'm not a huge fan of zoos. But my feeling is let's just restore their natural areas and
Yeah.
let them do that. But this is us. This is who we are now, and the cub is pretty darn cute.
Yeah, and the upside to zoos is that they train people and they train children to respect animals, to really love animals. I mean, that was true for me. I mean, I grew up with Central Park Zoo, which was at that time horrible, habitats, or the Bronx Zoo, and that's where I learned about animals, and I've loved animals my whole life. So, there's that. There's the educational portion of it that is their best justification.
Well, when I grew up in Detroit, and I went to the Detroit Zoo. I could ride my bike to the Detroit Zoo, which wasn't too far away, and the best part was the train that ran around the perimeter of the zoo. We just wanted to get on the train and just go around the zoo that way. So, all right,
That's
Bob Benenson, people can subscribe to Local Food Forum. Go to what it says there, localfoodforum.substack.com. You have a free version, but you also have a paid version, and I know you appreciate people who will pay to get the good word about good food.
Or sign up for free. We're trying to build a community here. I jumped into this because nobody else was doing it, and I just felt that our farmers and our farmers markets and our farm to table restaurants and our food access advocates and everybody else who's involved in this, including eaters, just needed this kind of communications platform, and I'm doing what I love. I hope that's pretty evident. So
it kind of is, Bob. I don't think you need to worry about that. So thanks once again for being with us. Enjoy your crazy summer of going to farmers markets.
Yeah, and thanks. I always enjoy being on the show, and hopefully I'll come back soon.
I hope so too. And we will be right back with the Green Dispatch right after this.
From spring seed and soil treatments to summer foliar feeding to fall stubble digesters, Blazing Star provides microbial tools from tiny biologicals for natural and organic farmers. They have solutions for home gardeners too. And Blazing Star offers agroecological education and consulting, especially for permaculture work in zones 4 and 5. Learn more about these great folks at blazing-star.com.
Don't really have a favourite tree specifically. Trees are so different, and at different ages they have different things that make them interesting. Scots pine trees have fantastic bark. The giant redwood is fantastic again because of the bark and the size of it. My name is Gary Hill and trees are my thing, but I'm also into shrubs. Keep calm and prune on.
Every second, every minute, every day, our world is changing. Climate change is real. Very soon, within your lifetime, every person on the planet will have been touched by the destructive force of climate change. This is the biggest threat humankind has ever faced. Humans have caused this, and we can stop it. There is still time. Stop climate change in its tracks. Add your name to the call for a global deal to stop catastrophic climate change.
And welcome back. I thought that was pretty interesting. I stumbled across that during.
Yeah, and from Oxfam too.
Yeah, yeah. There's some great stuff. I saw a couple that were just so. Boy, they made their point in a really graphic way, and I said, "Ooh, no, not going down that road. I'll take something a little more symbolic. That works for me." We don't have a whole lot of time for the Green Dispatch, but there's a lot. Boy, if I got. I mean, I sent myself even some more emails last night as I was nodding off. I had a number of articles that I found at the last second. One of which I want to mention that there's a meteor shower that might be happening tomorrow night, Memorial Day, the 30th into the 31st. And this is something that is either going to be spectacular or a dud. And scientists just don't know which. But
a dud in whose terms?
A dud in who? Well, from people who want to watch a meteor shower. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. But there was a comet called 73P Schwassman Watchman. Okay, go say that quickly. In 1995, it was first spotted in 1930, responsible for a weak meteor shower called the Tau Herculids, which nowadays appear to radiate from a point about 10 degrees from the bright star Arcturus. In 1995, Comet SW3, that's an easier way to say, suddenly and unexpectedly brightened. A number of outbursts were discovered or observed over a few months. The comet had fragmented, releasing huge amounts of dust, gas, and debris. By 2006, which is 2 orbits later, the comet had disintegrated further. And basically, this year, we're going to be traveling through its tail tomorrow night. Now, this sometimes results in spectacular meteor showers, and but there's no way to predict. It could be, so they're trying to be really cautious. Scientists to say, yeah, there might be something cool here, and guess what?
Nighttime, partly cloudy, all cloudy, clear.
Yeah, but as usual, it's going to be late. It'll be at night, and I think here, I don't know. I think partly cloudy. So I think folks might be able to see some of this in the Chicago region. Kathleen and I tried to get a cabin at Bullfrog Lake, but yeah, I know. We should have done that January 1st if that was going to happen, and I didn't even realize. I thought, oh yeah, Memorial Day, that's not going to happen. So I don't even know what we would see in the city here. You could go out to the lake there, very close by, and probably see something spectacular. And I think it's kind of, but it might be. Rip roaring, and it might not be. So
and again, partly cloudy, partly clear. Although with the eclipse a week or two ago, it cleared up enough to see it.
Ah, well, I didn't get out. I didn't get outside for that. So, excuse me. One of the things I'm going to highly recommend people read. I sent it to you, and did you get through all of it eventually, or did you just get?
I read the whole thing.
Yeah, I know. Very disturbing. And I didn't do you any favors, and you didn't sleep well because of it. I saw this story in Current Affairs, and I think I was alerted to it probably by Dave Pell, who does a newsletter. And it's called, and I highly recommend everybody read this to know what's going on in our world. You want a realistic sense of what we're facing in a world where we're gobbling up our natural areas and paving them over. And speaking of that, in a couple of weeks we're going to be talking on this show with some folks from Depave Chicago, which is an idea I came up with a year ago. But it turns out that I wasn't the first, that there were people already working on it. And I should have known. But we talked about it. How my idea was unpaved 50%. The idea we take 50% of the asphalt and the concrete and rip it up and allow percolation and allow the world to do its
All
thing.
the abandoned areas.
Yeah. But there is a
Abandoned plots and everything.
so in 2 weeks we're going to be talking to the Depave Chicago folks. But there's this article is called "The Annihilation of Florida: An Overlooked National Tragedy," and it's about Florida. And we know Florida is a hot mess, hot literally and figuratively, but they're a mess with perhaps the most dangerous governor, most dangerous politician in the world today, in Florida, and that's that guy DeSantis, who's just he's a Stalin in training, basically, down there. But this article is about all of the stuff that is going on in Florida to try to save their natural areas and all of the things they're facing against them. There are these efforts. Every time you turn around, they want to put in a new tollway, and they want to rip up land to put in a new tollway, as if they're needed. They're really not. And one of the things we've learned about, and it says so in the article, one of the things we've learned about highways is that the more highways you put in, the more traffic there is, which is why basically when people,
More sprawl.
yeah, and people propose, we got to widen this highway. Nope, it's just going to get crowded the way it is now. Leave it. But the author of this article, who is Jeff Vandermeer, he calls it an accelerating race to destroy Florida's wilderness, shows what we value, and previews our collective future during the climate crisis. And from what he writes, it doesn't look good. And I urge you to read it, not because you care that much about Florida, but because it applies to all of us. Doesn't matter which state you're in. The same forces are at work. The paving forces, the people who we've got to get rid of the idea, first of all, that progress means paving and building and steel and concrete. We have just got to get that out of our heads, because that's going to kill it. Well, it's already killing us. You know me. I'm not an optimist. I don't think there's a lot of hope here, but we have to talk about it anyway. And it'll take you a while to get through. It's probably a 20-minute read, and that'll scare some people off. But please, if you have a moment, go check out the link. I
posted it on the Facebook feed. I can't get it up to YouTube, obviously, but I got it on the Facebook feed here.
Yeah, I could pop it on there. You know what? And
some of the context of the article is it's looking at all of the fragmented habitat and ecosystems within Florida and the effort to try to build wildlife corridors throughout the state, and how they're being thwarted in part by all of these tollway extensions, extra bits of tollway that they want to put in, and all the development. And it's connecting these wildlife corridors versus the ongoing development and the I think it was referring to the vision of population, how much of the population will be in Florida by 2030, 2040.
Right. And all the species that are going to decline because of this or be extirpated, and on and on and on. And again, my feeling is you read that, you can see all the other states as well, and the rest of the world as well, in this cautionary tale. So please take a look at it. I just posted it as well, in case people can look at it. Axios. Yeah, shame we don't have Rick here, but he's supposed to be back with us next week. I don't know for sure. Haven't talked to him. Who knows? Who knows if he's maybe he's gone to another country. I don't know.
He was in Florida last heard.
Yeah, exactly. I get to talk to him. Hey, Florida is a hot mess, Rick. What do you got to say about that? The upcoming Atlantic hurricane season is likely to be unusually active, according to Axios and the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration. They released this on Tuesday. The big picture, NOAA is forecasting a 65% chance that the upcoming hurricane season will be above average, with a 25% chance of near normal activity and just a 10% chance of below normal tropical cyclone numbers. They're saying that the agency is predicting a 70% chance, and again, it's just a chance, this is their predictions, of 14 to 21 named storms. Of these, 6 to 10 would become hurricanes, and of these, 3 to 6 would intensify into major hurricanes of Category 3 or greater. Also along those lines, I found this story from the Associated Press. Their headline, Weather's Unwanted Guest, Nasty La Nina keeps popping up. And they're saying that La Nina is going on its third year, which is very unusual. It's not unprecedented. It's just unusual. And it's causing some of the heat and drought and also flooding that we've been seeing. And that is from the Associated Press. Excuse me. And a couple of things I wanted to get into. We've set another record in terms of carbon in the atmosphere. We've hit 421.37 parts per million, beating the previous record last year of 418.95. So that just continues to do what it's going to do. We have a story there on how to stay safe during tick season. A story on Carvana, our good friends Carvana. You're not the only one who sent that to me, Peggy. Ron Cowgill sent the link to me as well. He says, well, what are you going to do? I said, what are you going to do about this? It doesn't mean that the city of Skokie is going to do business with them, and I hope they don't. But the state of Illinois...
I mean, they were told to go away until Skokie told them to go away until Skokie allowed them to talk to them again. So. Right.
So I just hope that's stupid. Every time I see a Carvana commercial on TV, I want to throw something at it. And something that I was kind of unaware of until I saw a newsletter from alderperson Michelle Smith in the 43rd Ward. She voted against the casino. Okay. She was one of the few people, and good for her. Congratulations to Alder Michelle Smith. But it passed. And the other thing I was unaware of is that they're ramrodding through all these different things right now, casinos and venues that they're going to open up on the Chicago River, which all this industrial area, which we were told, oh, we're going to put parks now in, and now we're going to put venues that allow unbridled noise to come out from them.
And lights, probably.
And lights.
And lights.
Yeah. It's just, oh, wait a second. Oh, and I got to put the...
Yeah, the links aren't working on some of those.
Oh, geez, I try. I was working so hard to get all those links up.
I think it's the last three of them.
Really?
The one's not.
Yeah. No, the tick season is up there. That one's working. The Stingray, that's there. So.
Okay. I'm not, there was some last evening when I was looking at, anyways, They weren't going through.
Well. But what the city council in its wisdom passed was, because of the Morton Salt, they want to have a temporary outdoor facility, and they're going to. City said, yeah, have at it. We'll let you put out the amplifiers and everything else you need. And what could possibly go wrong? How could that possibly harm nature or people or anything like that? I don't know what the hell is wrong with the city of Chicago. I can tell you one thing. Lori Lightfoot has convinced me. I will vote for anybody except her right now. I'm going to actively campaign against that woman when she runs. I don't care if Mickey Mouse. Well, no, that's a Disney thing. So you know what's going on in Florida. But I almost don't care. I got into a bad habit back in the day in Chicago for years, for decades. I would, in the mayoral race, I always voted for the person who didn't win, and was always proud of that. Unfortunately, I made a mistake in the last election and voted for somebody who won. That was obviously a mistake. So I need to go in another direction here. This current mayor does not care about the environment. She's secretive. She's belligerent. I don't understand her policies. I don't understand much about anything she does. So time for a change, folks, if you ask me. But that's just my soapbox here, and you can argue with me or not about that. All right, so I'm going to fix that link so you can see the editorial by our good friends at the Chicago Tribune, our whatever they're owned by, the money firm that owns them. But they do have a very good editorial about why the outdoor music venue proposal is a terrible one for the city of Chicago. I mean, we're still dealing with Lincoln Yards, which could have been a world-changing development, and it's just more steel and concrete. Just nonsense. But they're still fighting to get Alderman Smith. I should talk to Alderman Smith because she mentioned also in her newsletter that they're still fighting for the park at Lincoln Yards, and who knows whether that will happen at all. All right, you got anything that you want to add?
Other than the sign behind you.
Oh yeah, you do that, because I'm gonna while you're doing that, I want to grab some.
Speaking of alder critters, and speaking of Dolly Foster, who was on earlier, who's on the Chicago Excellence in Gardening Awards Committee. Thank you, Dolly.
Yay.
Yep. Gardens are going crazy right now, obviously, and now's the time to get out, take the photos, go to chicagogardeningawards.org if you live in the city of Chicago, and enter your garden. It's free. It can be your backyard. It can be your community garden, your church, business, school, container garden. Could be something up on your patio or deck that's spectacular. Vegetable gardens, ornamental gardens, butterfly gardens. If you live in the city of Chicago, we want to see your entry in the Chicago Excellence in Gardening Awards. Ooh, peonies already?
Peonies, yeah. My peonies have started blooming.
That's early.
Yeah, aren't they?
My lilacs just started.
Are you kidding me? My lilacs are about done.
No, just started. In fact, somebody on the block was commenting yesterday with the breeze going by how nice the lilacs smell, 2 doors down.
Yeah. There are some lilacs in Chicago that have been done for a month. I saw some blooming really, really early.
Cooler near the lake.
So, yeah, enter the Chicago Excellence in Gardening Awards. Go to chicagogardeningawards.org. Please be part of that. It's
free. It's fun.
What have you got to lose? All we can do is tell you, your garden stinks. No, we would never do that.
We never do that. No, usually we're expounding over how beautiful.
I know. That's our problem, is that we find it hard to cut the numbers so that we can actually have a ceremony and not include everybody in the whole city. So, we hope folks will.
Wouldn't that be good if we could?
I'd like to. We want to hit all 50 wards this year. So, and unfortunately, you need to live in Chicago to be part of that. Someday, maybe
you don't have to if you want to be a judge, but to enter the contest.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. Well, let's get out of here. Thanks to Dolly Foster for being on the show and talking to us about monarchs and milkweed. Thanks to Bob Benenson. Go to localfoodforum.substack.com. In terms of Dolly, you can go to hortforyou.net. All right. Yep. Thanks to Kathleen. Thanks to Legata. I don't know why I'm thanking her. She hasn't been around. Oh, thanks to Dolly's cat. She was wonderful. Basil the dog. And thanks to all of you watching. We really appreciate it. So until next time, go green or
go home.
Stadler?
Yeah, what?
Is that it?
Yes, it's over. How'd you like it?
I don't know. I slept through the whole thing.
Well, you didn't miss much.